I've had an excellent experience with him. So I wanted to have him come on to talk about Facebook ads as a potential marketing channel that you could use, or Instagram, or any sort of ads. I know he's focused on Facebook, but he actually does other things too. So he can talk about that. But anyway, Craig, the mic is yours. So
thanks, Kirk.
Yeah, go right ahead.
Yeah, appreciate it. Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Yeah, as Kirk said, I just want to give just a talk about what I see working with a lot of advisors with Facebook ads and mistakes and maybe some best practices and some examples. I'm just going to run through some slides, but we'll keep it informal. Kirk, you can monitor the chat. If anybody has questions or anything, feel free to chime in. And Kirk, feel free to interrupt me if you want me to hit a point a little bit harder, or if I miss something that you don't feel I explained it as good as I should. So what I want to go over today was just a marketing overview. I think one of the things that I tend to talk about with advisors is how Facebook ads can fit into part of a marketing advertising plan. So we'll go over that. Components to a successful campaign, we'll go over the blocks that we need. Some examples, I'll give you the best practice where I encourage advisors to take a look at. I think works well. I don't have a lot of success always getting advisors to do it, but I think it's something that you should consider if you're thinking about Facebook ads. And then a key takeaway, even if we get through this, you're like, I don't think Facebook ads are for me. There is one idea that I could leave you with that I think would be beneficial, where you don't have to get into a full-blown ad campaign if you don't feel like it's a good fit for your practice. So the first thing I think is really important when I talk to advisors, and a lot of other industries do this, that they figure out what the lifetime value of the client is. And it's super important to know that, because I think that's really the only way you can adequately determine a type of budget and client acquisition cost. Everybody just looks through their book, figure out what your average client revenue is. In this example, we just said, hey, maybe they have $500,000 and we're charging 1%. And then the length of the relationship. So depending on how long you've been in business, if you've been in business a long time, I'm sure you have relationships that have gone decades, or a decade, or a long time. We figure out what that lifetime value is. This doesn't include any insurance. It doesn't include, I don't know what you can sell books for, let's just say 2 times, right? So that number's even a little bit more. I think that's a really key to get an idea for your personal book of business. Figure out what your average client looks like. And like I said, that I think you have to know that before now you start making important decisions about capital that you're going to deploy to start targeting these types of relationships. Just like a marketing 101, a lot of advisors that we talk to, like, you guys are in the planning business, right? So you sit down, if somebody comes to you and says, hey, I want to retire X amount and this is how much money I have, you're going to put a plan together for them. So, I know sometimes this falls on deaf ears, but you really do need a marketing plan, a business plan in general, but in particular, a focus on a marketing plan to help keep you focused and keep the ball moving forward. Budget has to make sense. So when we talk to advisors a lot, I'm viewed really, I hope I'm viewed more as a consultant, but a lot of times if we talk about budgets, it's not a trick question in terms of how I want you to spend more with me. It's just, you have to know what the budget is, and you have to be able to feel good about that budget, that you can let that last. Because as we'll see in the next slide, there's too much kind of knee-jerk reaction. Hey, if that budget doesn't feel good to me, if I don't get any results in 30, 60 days, now I'm nervous and I'm pulling the plug, and that's just going to keep you running on the treadmill. Which goes along with that, we need patience and consistency. These things do take time. It doesn't mean that you're not going to optimize and assess and reevaluate, but you have to view this as a longer-term piece of the puzzle on how to your new AUM and realistic expectations. We'll get into that, but I think that's something else that a lot of, as Kirk mentioned, I know the space well, and what has happened, I think, from a digital marketing standpoint, you had a lot of these like digital coaches that go in and tell people who want to get into digital marketing, and they say, hey, pick a niche, which we'll talk about. Pick a niche where they make a lot of money. And they're like, oh, financial advisors make a lot of money. But what they don't realize is the metrics that go for most other industries they're not the same for financial advisors. So I think I'm empathetic to this. They're sympathetic to this because I've seen this a lot of times. I know you guys get, let's just say, preyed upon by a lot of marketers, and the expectations don't match reality, and there's a lot of over-promising and under-delivering. So I at least try to set realistic expectations on the front end. Just, again, so if you can feel comfortable with those expectations, now we feel good that maybe we'll be able to exceed them. But if those expectations make you feel uncomfortable, then listen, it's probably not a good fit, and maybe just focus on some other tactics to build that AUM. So here's just some of the market reality, and I apologize. I'm sure this is redundant for a lot of you guys, but this just helps frame the talk. Yes, what I just mentioned, 67% of advisors, I think this was Kitsis, Michael Kitsis had this one, they stopped their advertising, which is, I see that a ton. I personally have a lot of churn in my business where even though on the front end we try to have the same conversations we're just having now, I see it all the time. If we don't get instant clients or meetings within this first couple months, advisors pull the trigger and they move on to the next shiny object. 40% of advisors don't have a dedicated marketing budget. We talked about the importance of that. 1.6 of revenue on marketing and advertising. So just to put that number into context, a lot of other professional services that are, let's say, under $1 million of gross revenue, those are like 7 or 8. So there is a chronic underspending for maybe solo advisors, maybe a couple partners, or maybe your gross revenue is $1 million, $1.5 million. Usually you see that marketing is lower compared to other professional services industries. And 22% of advisors advertise on social media. I think that number can be skewed because maybe the wirehouse guys and gals can't necessarily do it, or there's not as much availability to them. So this is just what we see in terms of more of an industry overview. So now let's just jump into the steps implementing the campaign. So again, I think on the front end, we want to talk about how do we set realistic expectations with budget. We think it's important to identify a niche focus market. We'll explain that in a couple slides. We have to get our messaging right. We have to understand what that target market, how can we connect with them emotionally? How can we speak to them? How can we, in their mind, hey, this person is speaking my language. They know exactly what I'm going through, so I want to reach out to them. We want to determine the calls to action. That all goes in line with the messaging, the market, the budgets. So we'll explain how we determine what the calls to action look like. And then it's really important, but a lot of times overlooked by advisors, is we have to have a good follow-up strategy. So I would say this is probably the biggest mistake that I made, or I see, is a lack of follow-up strategy. So in my role, I'm usually hired by financial advisors to develop leads and interest, right? So it might be a market that they want to tap into, but they're not in it yet. We help them get in front of these people. Problem is, once we get in front of these people, it's not instantaneous that they're going to raise their hand and say, I got to meet this person, right? We have to stay top of mind. And what I find is that as these leads go to the advisors, there is not a consistent follow-up cadence that goes on, which will impact conversions. That's a big thing. We talk about the lifetime value of the client with other industries. Think about it. Most companies, bigger companies, there's a marketing department and then there's a sales department. The marketing department generates the interest. The sales department usually gets the meeting and closes the business. What I see with a lot of financial advisors, and again, I think it might be on the expectation front, is there's a lot of, I think, over-promising that, hey, you can run these Facebook ads and you're just going to generate meetings. That's not to say that you can't. But again, if we want to manage realistic expectations, if you're in a market for the first time, we most likely got to start with leads, and we can talk about a few ways that we can do that for you. So kind of expectations and budget. I always say it should be part of like your annual business plan. I'm sure if you haven't thought about it, you will be probably in the next month or so. You're going to reflect on what your 2024 looks like, and you're going to put together a 2025 business plan on how you can increase revenue. Marketing ads should be part of that, right? What niches, again, do you want to get into? What areas do you want to get into? What type of budget, again, do you feel comfortable with that you can let that go for a year? Again, not to say that you're just going to be asleep and not pay attention to it, but that number needs to feel good so you can keep it in there. This is just what we talked about, right? If you're brand new, we got to crawl before we can walk, before we can run. In the beginning of any campaign, let's say, especially Q1, like the first quarter of any campaign, we're really going to be more leads focused, right? Are we generating leads? Are we generating interest? Is our messaging resonating with that target market? Then as we get leads, now we can get into, okay, how are we converting those leads? And that's going to become meetings. And then obviously once you start to have these meetings, how many meetings do we think it's going to take us before you start to get to the clients and getting the AUM in the door? We talked about budget that you can live with. Now, I say shoot for a 1-to-1 ROI in the first year. And again, a lot of other industries, you'd say you want 2, 3, 4, 5. Here's my point on that though. Remember that lifetime value of a client. You can make the case that if you're breaking even, so let's just use simple math. Let's say you're spending $10,000, you get $1 million in AUM, and you're charging 1%. That's like a break even. I know your payouts aren't 100%, but just bear with me here. But remember, probably really good at what you do. You're probably really good at servicing your clients. If you have that client 5, 6, 7 years, that lifetime value, maybe now that number's 5-to-1, maybe it's 6-to-1, maybe it's 10-to-1, maybe it is 15-to-1. Remember, not counting any potential referrals, not counting any insurance, all that type of stuff. So I think in like the first year, if it's a brand new campaign, I think you can feel okay if you say, hey, I spent 10 and it brought me $1 million. I'm not saying that's not the goal, but I think that at least should be a baseline to where then you can decide, okay, how do I want to proceed with any sort of advertising or market budget? Do I need to change course? Do I need to do something new? Now, when we get into the market, again, you guys know this, niche focused, typically you'll grow faster, higher retention, more referrals. But the way I focus on niche, it's really marketing efficiency. So most of my advisor clients, they're not spending $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 a month on any marketing, let alone just ads, right? So their budgets are a lot more limited. So now my job is, okay, how can I make that budget be as effective as possible? And the more niche that you are, the better off you're going to be, especially on Facebook. What we have found, and Kirk can even speak to this, some of the stuff we do for him, but if we get too broad, Facebook can get kind of junky. Those leads coming in can be a little dicey, not super high quality. So we're always walking the balancing act of it is a numbers game, but we do want some quantity coming in. So the more niche focused that we can be, it allows us to be as cost effective as possible in terms of the budgets. So here are some examples of niche focus with Facebook. I'm also going to tell you where Facebook is creating some problems for some of my advisor clients in terms of how they change their custom audience build. So when you go into Facebook, you can build out a custom audience. That's the cool thing, right? So you basically can build out the type of market that you want, right? You can look at age, you can look at location. The problem with Facebook, which I know is important for advisors, they've really stripped out any financial data. You do have the ability to target. They do ranges of zip codes. So it's like top 5% zip codes, top 25% zip codes. That data to me, again, can get a little bit noisy. So I think we have to put some guardrails on that. So the financial stuff has been stripped away. But some of the things where you can leverage Facebook and all of their users is employees at a specific employer, right? So just think about, we're going to get into a little bit about ad copy, but if you do retirement planning, a lot of times when we talk to advisors, say, I want people 55, 10 years of retirement, $1 million net worth. And that's great. But in order to do that on Facebook, if it's that generic, your budgets might have to go up because you're not really capturing their attention. So it's the same thing. It's we help retirees plan for retirement. What if it said, hey, we help Verizon retirees, or Verizon employees prepare for retirement. We help Boeing employees prepare for retirement. It's just a very good way to call out on the ad. So now that person is, remember, because they're going through their scrolls and all of a sudden they see something pop up that says Verizon. No, I work at Verizon. Let me check this out. Specific occupations and industries. Facebook's still pretty good at the occupation level and the industry level. So examples, again, your dentist, your professional services. Business owners can get a little bit wonky because what tends to happen, remember, we can't screen for like revenue or anything. So what happens is if Facebook might just see an entrepreneur who just started something, they might be deemed as a business owner, and that's probably maybe not the person that you really want to target. So business owners, there's other things we could potentially layer on there to help protect against that. But CF sales, different types of occupations are still pretty good. Clients down in Texas, big oil and gas, we'll just target the oil and gas community. North Jersey, outside of Philadelphia, a lot of pharma. Up north of where I'm at, so you might just target people in the pharmaceutical industry, maybe not employer specific. There's some ideas just from more of an occupation and what they do for a living. But then you also have services, right? So you can be niche from a service, right? So maybe you want to do college planning. Kirk's got a really good college planning solution that if he hasn't shared with you, I'm sure he will at some point. But where college planning is interesting for Facebook is you can target parents of children, and they'll ban the age of how old the child is. If you want to do anything around college planning, that's pretty good. If you do stock options or tax planning strategies, again, maybe you really want to focus on cash balance and you target your dentist and your surgeons industries that maybe look at cash balance. Don't think niche is only just like the person. It also can be basically what you do, because remember, you can now be more targeted in what you're advertising and saying to folks. Widows and divorce, I put an asterisk. That has been a really good lead gen tool for us, but Facebook took it away. That's the only other issue with Facebook is they can change and we don't have a say, so we just have to adapt. So we do have a workaround solution where we can get some data and upload that into Facebook. I'll get into that too, because that's building a custom audience. That's kind of part of one of my key takeaways that I think you should be aware of, and we'll get to that. So that's a money in motion type of thing that's been interesting. Just talking money in motion. Facebook is not good with like job transition. So anything, if we knowing firsthand, hey, this person changed jobs, that's tough. Honestly, you're better off getting that data maybe from like LinkedIn. And again, there can be ways where you can scrub data off LinkedIn and potentially upload it to Facebook if you wanted to. But the rollover market's tough from that standpoint. And then if you're doing any in-person events, interests are really cool. We've had clients that, one in particular was looking at women business owners, and she had a sommelier come out, and obviously her target on Facebook to garner interest was people interested in wine and women business owners. Let's say you're into golf, right? And you want other golfers, and maybe you do an in-person event where there's a golf instructor and then you have a presentation, right? So just know that it's really good for in-person events. Any other stuff, unless you have a really creative way to merge the hobby or the interest or what you do, I haven't found anything, at least from the people that I work with, anything great on that, but it's really good if you do in-person stuff, in-person seminars, to keep that in mind if that's something that you might be interested in. Before I keep droning on, is there anything you want me to stop? And I don't know if you've got any questions or you just want me to keep plugging away. We can just cover questions at the end.
No, you can keep plugging away. You could also open up to group for questions too. This is a very interactive group, so if you want to make it more interactive, you can. So yeah, whatever you want to do works for me.
Okay, yeah. So what I'll do is I'll go through the components and then we'll jump through, maybe see if there's any comments, questions, and then we'll plug along. Now the messaging, the ad copy, obviously very important. The goal of any ad copy is we want to demonstrate that you understand them, what they're going through, what their issues are. Connecting emotionally, that's really the ultimate goal with trying to run some ads, or really any copy. Could be email, could be anything. Here are some of the big picture things. It's make money, save time, escape pain, and comfort, right? Those are some of the things that a lot of copywriters say. These are the things that kind of move. Now, I know from a compliance standpoint, you're never going to go out and overtly say, hey, we can make you more money, right? But that's always something that people are interested in, right? So maybe that type of copy is viewpoints on the market or opportunities in the market or your quarterly reviews, or whatever the case is there. Saving money, a lot of saving money, that a lot of taxes do really well. From a marketing perspective, taxes is universally hated, right? Everybody's looking at strategies to save taxes, tax tips, those sorts of things. Save time, you probably got that because they're usually going to work with an advisor because they don't want to put the time in to do it on their own. They probably don't have the knowledge. Escape pain is big, right? If you look at a lot of the things that people are worried about when they're getting retirement, right? It's, hey, I'm afraid I'm going to run out of money. I'm afraid inflation is going to keep going up and it's going to impact my budget. I'm afraid that I might be a burden on my kids. Pain is a really effective tool. Now, we're not saying that you fear mongering, anything like that, but that's a good way to poke and try to make the reader feel a little bit uncomfortable and say, hey, maybe I should do something. And then more comfort. That's huge too, right? What you guys do is provide more comfort. You give peace of mind. You give confidence. You reduce stress, right? These are the types of things that we want to make sure that you're incorporating in your ad copy to potentially connect with the audience. Just a real quick, it's a silly analogy, but this is something as minor and how big of an impact it made. We were working with a group. They wanted to work with a railroad company, and they were targeting employees at this company, and they were brand new, so they didn't realize that there was a railroad retirement, right? So once they realized that there was something like railroad retirement and they put that in their ad copy, it really improved uptick. So just little things. The more information you have about the audience, obviously, the more impactful the ad copy will land. So call to actions are obviously very important when you're thinking about the overall strategy. So really the call to actions, think about it is, we call it a lead magnet. So that could be a report. It could be a checklist. It could be a white paper, 5 tips for business owners to save taxes, or common mistakes retirees make as they prepare for retirement, right? Things like that. Now the lead magnet, it's usually where we start if you're brand new into an audience, you're just trying to get some exposure. Because the lead magnet is going, usually, it's going to be the furthest thing away from actually getting that meeting, right? They're probably maybe interested, maybe you got their attention. Unfortunately, what happens is they fill out their information, they get the report, whatever, and maybe in 25 minutes, they completely forgot they did it, right? Lead magnets is usually a good place to start, but that's just step one. The next thing is invitations to educational events. Now, they could be in-person seminars, they could be live webinars, they could be pre-recorded. Typically, this equates to maybe a more serious candidate because now they're trading their time for the information. The lead magnet's easy. They put their information, they get it, they move on. At least here, if they're showing up to the event, you probably think, okay, they're more likely interested in whatever topics we're talking about. So typically that's going to be usually a better lead, somebody that hopefully is closer to converting to that meeting. And then we have the actual trying to get the meeting. So that could be a free strategy session review, right? Cash flow analysis, whatever you do in your business, it's just a free giveaway. Now, typically we don't like to start with free strategy sessions or reviews if you're new to the market. That's not to say you can't. It's not to say that it could be successful. I think a lot would have to do on your knowledge base of that niche market. If you really have it cold on what they're going through and what their needs are and what their problems are, then it could work. But again, typically we get to that when we'll talk a little bit about retargeting. So those are really the 3 calls to action that are pretty universal, and they fit well with a Facebook ad. Just real quick too, on the call to action space, the lead magnet, especially on Facebook, is you can do just what's called a form fill. So you can have that lead magnet and they can just download it right there. You can send it via email too if you want to. The invitations to like a webinar, typically you'll especially if it's pre-recorded. So we have advisors that like to do pre-recorded stuff. So there we would build a landing page and post the video there on the landing page. So that would just be another piece of the puzzle that you might have to incorporate into this, might be a landing page. I will tell you, if you're really serious about the potential market that you're in, it does make sense to build a dedicated landing page specific to that niche market. Because what tends to happen is if they go, let's say, to your website, and again, just use the same example. We're talking about Verizon employees. Let's say you want to target a specific employee at a company. If they go to your website and it doesn't say, hey, talking about Verizon employees prepare for retirement, maybe they bounce off. Maybe they're like, okay, they're not really the specialist I thought they were. They're not really the expert on my niche. But if they go to the landing page and it says right when they get there, hey, we help Verizon employees prepare and transition into retirement. Now there's a higher likelihood that maybe they stick a little bit more, they read a little bit more. Obviously, anything where we can populate on that landing page that has, again, more to do with their pain points, the issues that particular niche is going through, that's just going to help with conversions, right? It's going to help people it's going to help you being viewed as that go-to expert, hopefully getting them into that next step a little bit quicker than if you were just more of let's just say, the generalist that just talks about more of retirement planning to a broader audience. So, oh, I'm sorry, one more thing here, the follow-up strategy, and then we'll just open up to see if we have any questions, and then we can continue. As I mentioned earlier, this is probably the biggest mistake I see with advisors is letting these leads die on the vine. So again, marketing 101, we've all read, it's like around 7 touches before the prospect moves, right? So they have to see your messaging on average, let's say 7 times before they take the next step. So we can do that with retargeting, but that's where email funnels can become very powerful. We want them to see your messaging. We want them to see you. We want them to understand that you're of value of content and helping them with various pieces of the retirement planning puzzle. So that follow-up is critical to get the conversions that you're going to want to make that ROI palatable to you, or else again, you're probably going to move on. The cool thing with LinkedIn or Facebook, and you can do it on other platforms as well, but we want to retarget, right? So I use the analogy, when we first start, we're looking for a needle in a haystack. And we have to have a lot of hay. There's a lot of hay to get to that needle, right? The retargeting, we're removing the hay. So an example might be if we started, let's just say $10 a day for our target market. Maybe after 30, 60 days, we still stay at 10, but maybe it's $8 to new people, and maybe it's $2 to retargeting. And then slowly retargeting will take over. So that will help speed up the follow-up. It will help make sure that they're constantly seeing you. So that's critical in order to have an effective plan. You have to make sure that you're retargeting. You can retarget based on how they engage with the ad. You can also retarget people that kind of land on your website. So that's why it's important, I think, if you're really committed to this niche, is to have a private landing page, because you can do what's called a pixel on that landing page, and anybody there is specific to that niche, and that's who you're going to want to make sure that you're retargeting in that particular campaign. And then follow-up phone calls are very important. I know the phone can be taboo to a lot of folks, but it really will boost conversions. So the nice thing with putting a follow-up strategy in place is, we know they raised their hand, but maybe they're not qualified. This is where email funnels come in handy. You can see who keeps opening your email. So maybe you're not following up with everybody if you don't want. but maybe you say, hey, this person keeps opening my email. You know what? I'm just going to do a quick intro call, introduce myself, and just try to create a conversation. That I think is critical from a conversion standpoint. It helps with the uptick in conversions. And that's something that I see a lot of advisors aren't doing. And we'll go into some examples next of some big companies and what they do, just so you can see how that the rubber meets the road on that. So before we jump in, I would just say any questions, you can send them to Kirk of what I've covered. The next phase is I just wanted to jump in really now more some examples, some case studies, and like I said, some key takeaways for you.
Hey, Craig, I got one question. So for the deliverable, whatever, like how long do you expect it to be? Is it like a 1-pager, 2-pager kind of maxing? Do you have any thoughts on what you should typically give a client?
Yeah, I think it really depends on how well we can effectively convey that message to where you're getting your points out, right? So there's no really rhyme or reason. I think like checklists, 1-pagers, tips, I think are good in the beginning. Something a little bit more long form absolutely works. Because remember, as long as we're adding the value, that's really the key. So if this is something valuable and information that this niche market needs and wants, it could be a 4 or 5-page report. We've done that. It could be just, like a 1-page checklist, things like that. So I think a lot of that kind of goes into sort of the strategy on once we identify who that target market is, what that deliverable would look like.
Gotcha. Do you ever do videos or send them to a quick video on that? Or is that part of an email sequence, or is that just more downloadables, more important?
Well, you just stole my thunder now, because that's my best practice. So hold that thought, because you are onto something, and we'll touch on that in a few minutes. If I haven't bored people enough, maybe that little tease card will keep them on board for another 10, 15 minutes. But yeah, I think video is very powerful, and we'll talk about that in a second.
Thanks.
Yep. All right, let's move ahead. Kirk, again, if you need to interrupt me, go ahead. So I want to talk about Fisher Investments real fast. I'm sure you've all heard of Fisher Investments. I'm sure you've seen their ads. They spend a ton of money on advertising, and their funnel, let's call it, is really a lead magnet, right? So it's like 15-minute retirement plan, 7 mistakes retirees make. You'll notice too, because this is a tactic that we do use for some clients, but if you've noticed, remember we talked about that Facebook stripped away financial data. So if you've noticed, what's Fisher's ad? A lot of them say 500,000. 500,000, 500,000. So retirement planning, once you've accumulated 5,000, if you have $500,000, avoid these mistakes in retirement. So it's a way for them knowing that you can't really effectively do that on Facebook. They use the content as a way to hopefully screen their audience. But here's what people don't realize about Fisher Investments, and this is where it could be like a good news, bad news type of thing. I guess the way you look at it. So Fisher is not relying on opt-ins and meetings right off the bat, right? Basically, they're doing a form fill, they're getting your email information, and they have an army of callers, tons and tons of callers. They're making 200 dials a day. That's all they're doing. They're just following up these leads. Now, this 14 to 1's outdated. It's probably a number of years old, so I don't know if that number's gone down with call lists and things like that. But the ratio that I heard from the callers was they had a 14 to 1 contact ratio for book appointments. So that means they would call everybody that requested the information. They would follow up with them. And basically, it took them 14 people to talk to them to book 1 appointment. So it's what we were talking about. And I've seen a lot of marketers do this to advisors that don't know the space. They use Fisher Investments almost as like a case study. Hey, see how well Fisher does. You can do it too. What they don't get is Fisher's relying on the phone. They're not relying. They're generating the leads, but all that follow through is phone work. That's all it is. So, it just gets back to my last slide where the phone is important. Again, I'm not saying that we can't generate interest and meetings and things like that without the phone. But if you look at a lot of these big firms that do lead gen, we'll get to a lead gen example in a second, and like a Fisher, a phone does play a big part of it too. So I want you to just keep that in mind. I think if you don't have a mechanism or an interest, right? So if somebody on your team or you, if nobody's gonna make follow-up phone calls, I would really second guess how you want to move forward with any advertising, right? And I definitely wouldn't go into a lead magnet if you're not going to do follow-up phone calls. Maybe there we get into more webinars, seminars, things like that, because you're going to have to nurture these leads. And at some point, if you want to increase and maximize conversion, somebody in your team's going to have to put a follow-up phone call out there. So I'm sure you've heard of Smart Asset. So Smart Asset, is a behemoth, right? So they're huge in the lead gen space. So Kirk and I were just looking at these numbers, the other day, and it's pretty staggering, right? So just a real quick recap, if you don't know Smart Asset or like a Wiser Advisor, these are big lead gen companies. So what they do is they run these ads, right? They get people to answer a few questions about their finances. They self-report their income and net worth. I'll get into that in a second because I just found something interesting about what they do as well. And then now they have this information, and now what Smart Asset does is now they give that lead out to a couple different advisors. Okay, and then basically it's a race to get to the person first. So they're basically saying that it takes about 20 to 26 leads to generate a client. Now, just so you know, they charge anywhere between, I don't know, 200 to 300. It's tiered based on net worth, but a couple $100. Okay, so they're basically saying the cost of a new client is $4,200, and they're basically saying 7. So that means they're saying you got to spend about $30,000 a year in this program, right? And if you see the bottom, I don't know if you can see that, but the lead conversion rate's 3%, right? So a very low conversion rate in terms of the lead gen. Again, if you think about it, all they're basically doing is generating the interest. And again, the mechanism to get somebody to meet with you typically is somebody leveraging a phone call, right? A follow-up phone call. So again, I just want you to keep in mind that why I'm trying to alert you on this is, listen, I haven't found any magic bullet. If I did, I'd be a partner in $1 billion AUM, and I'd be doing this call, from the beach, right? So there's no shortcut. It's work. It's hard work. Anybody tells you different, I don't know how forthcoming they're being with you. It just means that any strategy that you put in, it's a grind, right? We got to put the work in to do it. There's really no shortcut. Real quick, because I went over that. Any particular questions about lead gen companies or what I just described with like Fisher? I'll just do a quick pause there, and if there's any other questions, because I have studied the lead gen companies a lot. Okay. So now let's try to help you. Okay, we went through some stuff. I'm new to this, or I've been doing it. How do I figure out what the numbers should look like? So I will tell you from a lead cost perspective, depending on the industry or the niche that we look at, I've had lead costs as low as $6 up to $30, $40, $50 if it's a little bit more of a smaller market and more specific, right? So that now is going to get you into more of a quality over a quantity play. But let's just walk through the numbers here. Let's just say our lead costs for whatever campaign you're looking at are $15, okay? And on average, let's say we need about 14 to 26 leads. This is just based on some of the examples I just gave over some of these big guys. Let's just say it's $20, okay? So you're looking at about $300 a meeting. And let's say your close ratio is 25%, right? So that would be about $1,200 to attain one client. Now, these numbers, of course, could be better. They could be worse, right? There's no way of me knowing. So remember, I lose visibility on a lot of this stuff once we generate the leads, because that's usually the role that I play. But that's in line. I don't know if you've read Broadridge. They do a marketing report every year. And they're consistently, if you're looking online, the average acquisition, I think they use 1,400. So that's, I think in your head, that's what you should be thinking about. Again, doesn't mean that can't be lower, but I just think from a baseline perspective, especially if you're new to this, these are the things that I think in your mind is that, can you handle that? Can you stomach that? Because again, I think that will help you decide if running ad campaigns are a good fit for your business. Well, let me stop on this slide too and just see if there's any questions on that. So let me just give you some, now I'm picking these for a reason, because they're successful from a lead gen, but success from the advisor perspective. So I had one client who was a widow herself. So she nailed the messaging in terms of what widows go through when they lose their loved one and the financial implications of that. So we did multiple lead magnets for her, and we were generating leads for about $7 for her. So we generated a couple hundred leads. And the reason I picked this one is because they self-identified as widows. They were right in the wheelhouse. And we talked about a follow-up strategy. The person didn't follow up with one lead. So now it became a question, this campaign isn't working. We talked about email. Now, again, I wasn't controlling this because she said that they had in-house to do this. That's where it's mission critical. You get these leads. We got to do something with them. We got to nurture them. Of course, we were retargeting and things like that. But at a minimum, at least we have to put an email cadence behind this to make sure that they're constantly seeing you. So we did a pre-recorded webinar. And the common theme for these two is really, we talked about that emotion connecting. So this was a couple years back. And the NYPD, I had an advisor who had a couple clients that were part of the NYPD. And this was like after COVID, there were all these issues, Lazio and a lot of NYPD were putting their paperwork in. He knew exactly what the process was. He knew everything. I gave that analogy about the railroad retirement. He knew his cadence was phenomenal. He knew exactly what they were going through. And we did pre-recorded webinars, and he was getting $24 an attendee. We were generating leads for 10, 11. So what the difference between an attendee and a lead would be if just somebody registers, but they don't watch. Because we had software we could tell who watched the webinar. So that was $24 of people who watched his webinar start to finish. And the attendees were even better. And I bring this up because, again, he actually got a handful of meetings and got a client out of it, but he wasn't following up with most of them either, which, I mean, again, made no sense to me. That was a big impact. He still made a really good ROI and got some referrals out of it. Again, if you're not going to commit to the follow-up, you probably can deploy your capital elsewhere in terms of building a business. And then the in-person seminar, this one is a little bit skewed because we were doing a company specific. So I'm down in St. Louis, so a couple of big headquarters down there. So we targeted a few companies. Now, this is a little bit skewed because he did get a wholesaler to pay for dinner. So it was one of those deals. But he got $20 an attendee, which is white glove and like a couple $100 per attendee. But again, I use that as a caveat because there was a dinner that was in placing, but we were fairly targeted with who we were inviting. So yeah, I'm sure you got some of the plate lickers, as they call them, but at least it was in a niche that he was trying to become that go-to advisor within these companies. And again, that was just attendees. So he had a pretty good attendance rate. I think about 60% of this one showed up. Again, probably dinner had a lot to do with that, but he also generated a lot of leads from that as well. So these are just some ideas of the lead magnet. We talked about like a pre-recorded webinar and then a live in-person event, just to give you some ideas of things that went pretty well from an interest standpoint. Okay, here's the question, the best practice. So if I were all of you right now, what I would recommend doing is, and I apologize, we didn't go into this. I do have, let me jump into this real first. Sorry about that. This is just an example of kind of what an ad looks like. I know you can't really see it, but the top part, it's very templated. So the top part is just going to be your ad copy. And if you see here, this is the image part. Okay, so you can put a graphic in there, or you can put a video in there. This was just a roll we did of some. We identified a company that had layoffs, and this was just like a B-roll that the advisor wanted to use of somebody being laid off, right? So this is what the ad looks like. And the bottom here, this is where your call to action is. So schedule a free call. This one was just secure your family's future. They were trying to just get back to a landing page where they were trying to book meetings there. And then this one was on your 2024 financial roadmap. So this was actually a lead magnet. So this is what the ad looks like. So I was saying is, from a best practice standpoint, what I would look to do is leverage video, right? You guys are in a personal relationship. You have to connect with these individuals, with these prospects. The sooner they quote unquote meet you digitally, I think that's where you can increase the conversion time, right? Now, I have a really hard time getting advisors to embrace this, but in my opinion, it's the most powerful thing you can do. So here's what it would look like, right? So you can record like a 15, 30-second video, and don't get bogged down on like major videography and editors. You guys probably see Facebook and LinkedIn, and a lot of people do stuff on their phones, right? So the quality is good enough with technology where it doesn't have to be, you don't have to put a lot of time and money into this, right? It just, again, needs to connect with the audience. It could be something as, hey, if you're worried about how inflation and rising taxes and market volatility can impact your retirement plan, we've created a 5 to 10 minute video that explains, how this happens and solutions to it, right? Just something just very basic like that, where you're just teasing an issue, right? That your clients are asking about you, or based on where we are in the financial markets, whatever, it is a major issue. And then you're basically just saying, hey, click below, register. And it can just be a very 5 to 10 minutes. It does not have to be long. Again, you don't have to waste a lot of time in terms of putting a lot of quality into the video. It just needs to be good content. It needs to be clear, concise, but it's really, we just want to get them to see what you do and again, meet you virtually, digitally. So in my opinion, I think that's what I would do. Like that would be my best practice all day long. I mean, Facebook backs this up. Conversions are better with video ads. Again, you're providing educational content. Again, doesn't it make sense that if you're trying to connect with people that, yeah, you can write a report and you can get good value, but what if you just did that report on a couple slides? And you literally could record that. We have advisors, like they just do it on Zoom, do like a screen share, record it. But you can get it edited if you want, get out the ums and ahs and all that stuff. But I think that's a really good way to connect with your audience as quickly as possible. So that would be, again, my opinion, the best takeaway. If I were just trying to figure out and analyze, hey, where do I start?
Craig, I think Patrick has a question. I don't know if that was deliberate. He was hand raised.
Okay, go ahead, Patrick. Sorry.
That was deliberate. Thank you. So I just had a question about follow-up.
Yep.
And I have a feeling I might open a can of worms here, but one of the things you note as soon as you start doing lead magnets is how difficult it is to get people to put their phone number in. You're drastically going to decrease your number of submissions if you ask for it.
Yep.
What's your take on that? Are we talking about different tiers as far as follow-up, i.e. top of the funnel, middle of the funnel, and different follow-ups for each?
Yes. So I think a best practice would be an automation. So as soon as that, let's just assume we're doing a lead magnet, right? As soon as they download the lead magnet, you have that thank you email going out. Okay.
Sure.
And then next day, if you don't get a response, there's another follow-up. And then start that cadence from email immediately.
Yep.
We do have a platform because we're trying to solve the problem of the follow-up. We leverage a company called Go High Level that does have a pretty good automation that's set up. Kirk, I'm sure you have some examples too. I just use Go High Level because for me personally, it's the easiest way for me to share the information with the advisor. So we each have login. And then for me, I just know the software the best, so I don't have to keep learning different software.
I've used it before.
Okay, yeah. So I think that's a really good. To answer your question about the phone, yeah, that's where we can't, there's no mechanism where we can see how the phone number is, how good it is. I would recommend things like Apollo. Apollo, I feel like, has pretty good data where you can get cell phones. Again, technically, I'm not an attorney here, but if they opt in, there's gray area under that. Even you can follow up regarding do not calls if they opt in. Again, don't listen to me on that. Just check. But that is an issue. That's why I've had to sometimes what we do if we're niche focused, let's say on a business, that's something else that we do because at least we can get the business number. Or is there probably maybe they don't answer the phone, but that absolutely is an issue on how good the phone data is. And yeah, we don't have great control over that, but we are always looking at data partners to try to enrich that lead so you have a good number.
Okay, so do you ask for it right off the bat? Do you ask for
we
it?
do, yeah. So we do it. Again, it's all customizable, but usually what we'll just do is first name, last name, email, phone number. Because the other thing, like with Go High Level and a lot of other platforms, if it is a cell phone, text messaging is pretty effective too. We can build out automations where we say, okay, as soon as they get the information, we'll send them an email. If we don't hear back, let's say in a day, we'll send another email. If we don't hear back, maybe later that day, maybe there's a text message that, again, it's more educational value answering questions. You're not bombarding them with, hey, meet with us. I don't think we want to do that in a new relationship. You're just basically touch points following up. Maybe you have another piece of information that you can send to them. And then you're going to just put them in more of your long-term nurture drip cycle. All right, so I know we're over an hour. So just one last thing I want to let's just go over the takeaway. So I think one very effective way to leverage Facebook, if you do not want to go down the whole campaign, you want to keep your budget at a minimum. I'm sure a lot of you have databases. I'm sure you have newsletters. I'm sure you have drips that you do. You have the ability to upload that into Facebook, and you can find who's on Facebook, and then you can retarget that way, right? But you guys understand the concept of diversification, right? When you put a retirement plan together, you talk about diversification. The same thing with marketing. Email is just one channel. It can convert well, but it's just one channel, right? So there is a way to automate and say, okay, they're getting my email. Okay, let me also send and add to them as well. So again, you're surrounding the prospect, if you will. And now, hopefully, what that might do is maybe it doesn't convert on the email, but maybe you see, or the ad, but maybe you see people opening your email more, right? Or maybe the same people, you're seeing a better conversion with driving them to another lead magnet or an educational video, something like that. So I would really consider at least that as an effective retargeting tool for people that already know you, that at least have heard of you. That could be an effective way. And then you can also do that on your website. So if you do get a lot of action on your website, again, you can install what's called a pixel on your website. Anybody who lands on that website, you have the ability to retarget. So I would say retargeting is a very cost-effective tool to just stay top of mind, right? I use the analogy, we're in Philly, we got the playoffs coming. You just want that, you just want them to know you're in the bullpen warming up, right? At some point, they're going to pull the pitcher, right? We want to make sure that you're there. So if their advisor didn't call them back, or they lost a bunch of money or whatever, maybe now they respond to your email, or maybe now they respond to their ad. So very cost-effective way to just stay top of mind on your existing database that you already have. That's pretty much all I had from walking down the path here. So again, if you have any questions or comments or anything you want me to touch back on, feel free.
Yeah, who else has questions? Not sure how many people here are doing Facebook ads or even considered them, or maybe even other platforms, not even Facebook, but LinkedIn, Instagram. Well, I guess Instagram's the same, but LinkedIn, maybe some of the other things you've done over time.
Yeah, so the only thing I will touch on is programmatic ads. Okay, so a programmatic ad essentially is if you're on your laptop and you see an ad pop up wherever you are, or if you're in an app inside of your cell phone and inside, let's say, the news feed, you'll see promoted posts, right? That's programmatic. Now, here's been the problem with programmatic. Programmatic was really geared towards companies and industries that were spending tens of thousands of dollars, like thousands and thousands of dollars on ads. Not my market. What we found, though, is there are what they call self-serve platforms coming out there where they do allow you pretty cost effectively to run programmatic ads. Now, the advantage with programmatic is they tap into a lot of really cool data sources where they do provide a lot more information that would probably be of interest to a financial advisor. And what I mean by that is you can get income, you can get net worth, you can target executives, you could target people that are doing research, let's say, on a particular product, annuities or insurance or whatever. You can target, let's say you're an RIA and you know that your solution fits a lot better for retirees than a wirehouse. You can target specific competitors. You could target likely do-it-yourselfers, right? So programmatic is interesting because it does provide a lot of the data, like I said, that advisors will find very interesting. And obviously age too, right? So you can get, and locations, you can get pretty granular. Now, I just found a programmatic partner that allows us to do minimums for as low as $300 a month. So again, you kind of, the more money you spend, the better, normally the more results you get. But at least it gives you an entree. If you want to stick your toe in the water, you can do it pretty cost effectively. Here's the thing with programmatic, though. You can't do form fills. So basically, if you do want to look at programmatic, when they click on the ad, you're going to drive them to a landing page. So that would be the strategy where whatever target market you're looking at, they go to the landing page. And when they get there, you make sure that the first thing they see is how you help that particular target market with the solution that you just ran an ad to them. And then there they could download it, or again, it could be a video, whatever you're trying to accomplish. So programmatic's interesting. Now, I will tell you, because we just started this, it's definitely, it's more of a quality over quantity type of thing. So the lead costs are up a little bit, but the couple of advisors that we just started this, and we're only like 60 days in, because I literally just found and vetted the data partner. But so far, they think the quality has been there. That's interesting just to think about, because the other thing that you need to look at is not everybody's on Facebook. Not everybody pays attention to Facebook. Not everybody's on LinkedIn. Not everybody pays attention to LinkedIn. Everybody's on their computer, right? Everybody's on their cell phone. So it does unlock a larger audience that maybe, again, if you're targeting a specific niche, maybe you're only getting 50% of that niche because that's the people that are on Facebook or social media. So that's something interesting. I told Kirk I'm going to keep him in the loop on how, when I get better metrics, I think it's very interesting, like I said, because it does provide a lot of the financial interest that I know advisors are paying attention to, but I just don't have enough data yet to really swear by it.
Let's see what else.
Yeah, I had one more Facebook specific question.
Yeah.
I'm just curious if you've seen lately this, what I think is new, because I don't think I've seen this before, but I rebooted some of my ads and it's now telling me that I have to wait a certain amount of time before I can do a custom audience. Like it's got to vet me now before I can create that custom audience again. Have you seen that before?
I talk to Kirk about this all the time. Facebook is a brutal platform to work with. It's awful. It's flat out awful. And it's just, they cut a ton of people. They cut customer service. We have so many issues that pop up. So it is challenging. But to answer your question, we've seen it all. Yeah. I mean, sometimes they'll pull the ad and they'll say it's political, and it's clearly not political. And then we have to say, what are you talking about? And then they approve it. I haven't seen that in particular, but I do know sometimes if you do change anything, if you change the destination, let's say where they're going, or if you change like the lead magnet, yeah, sometimes they will just want to make sure and vet where you're sending them to. We have seen that, but it wouldn't surprise me because we see a lot of issues with the campaigns, and you got to stay on them 24/7. Hey, Kirk, the only thing I will say, just I know you mentioned LinkedIn. LinkedIn has to be pretty expensive. How I would leverage LinkedIn is, I know advisors, you've probably been taught and have done, and you probably have a lot of connections. Your best practice there is create a business page and just post. That's free. So I think LinkedIn ads can be pretty expensive. We haven't done a lot of them just because it hasn't been super cost effective. So that would just be, again, something to consider. get the Facebook page, get the follows, and just then post on the page and hopefully just get your stuff growing organically to your target market.
Yeah, for my personal recommendation is don't touch ads on LinkedIn, just message people directly. And better than the business page. Like the business page, the problem with LinkedIn is they waffle all the time with what they're supporting and what they're not. Like, oh, we're supporting events. Now we're not. We're supporting carousels. Now we're not. And they're always all over the place. You can't ever get a foothold in LinkedIn. You just have to do everything. And it's better. Honestly, what I find is I've tried all the different hacks and strategies. What I find is the best thing to do is just use it to contact your people directly. You want to talk to a business owner, just message 10 people a day, like whatever it is. I know it's not automated and it's hard, but that's what I found the best results to be, not ads. I don't even remember last time I've seen that, even though I know they're there.
Yeah.
It's not an intuitive ad, like a Facebook ad, you get it, but LinkedIn, it's almost like you blaze over, you don't even notice it. What else?
Craig,
Yeah.
could you explain how you work with a client and how all this stuff works together?
Sure. Yeah. So essentially, usually my capacity is, like we talked about, is really putting the campaign together. If we don't have an idea of who we're targeting or who we want to go after, we do strategy on the front end to figure out who your target market is, who you're trying to go after. First thing we want to do is make sure Facebook is the right platform for that, right? So like I said, if you want to target, let's say divorcees, just as an example, it's getting a lot harder to do that now because as I mentioned, Facebook stripped that away. So on the front end is we're just very transparent in terms of, okay, who do you want to target? And then we can help plug in what's the best platform, whether it be building an email database, if your budget's, if you don't want to spend the money, helping build data for you, which we do help do. If you're just looking for data, we can help do that. Obviously, if you want to run the campaigns, we help you do that. So we essentially set everything up for you. We'll set up your Facebook ads account if you don't have one. Let me back up. We'll set up your business page if you don't have one. We'll set up your ads account. We'll build out the custom audience. We'll write the copy for you. We'll design the graphics. If you want to do the video ad, we'll help with scripting. So we'll say, hey, here's a quick 30-second script that that we can use. We can help with the edit. Long story short, we can really help in any capacity you want us to. And then obviously we're managing the ads like we talked about. We're making sure it's running. And typically what we do is in the beginning, we have a 2-week check-in point just to see how the ad's performing. Typically, we'll recommend replacing the ads every 30 days. So it's fresh. And we provide monthly strategy meetings, different talk tracks, different content for the next month. And then again, we do help if you want us to with the follow-up. So like I said, we can plug you into our platform to help with automated emails or at least help you get set up on how to make sure we automate this. Because remember, that is mission critical. We don't want you spending money on these leads and not have a good sound mechanism to follow up with them because we just don't feel like it'll be a good use of your dollars.
Mm-hmm. How about the lead gen pages?
Yeah, so we can do that too if you want us to. Yeah, so a lot of times, like we talked about, if you're really committed to it, we do think it's a critical building block. You really should have a personal, a landing page where we drive them to, and we make it private. Because, a lot of advisors say, I don't want my existing clients to know that I only want to work with dentists. They're not, right? Nobody's going to get to that landing page unless they click on something to drive them there. So yeah, we can help set that up as well. And I told Kirk, anybody who's interested, I'll do a free strategy session with you. We'll just talk, give me more information about what you're trying to accomplish, and I can point you in the direction of if I'm the right person for the job, but also identify again what the best platform is, because I think that's important. There's certain things where Facebook's not good at anymore. And in terms of advertising, really programmatic would be your option. And then other than that, you always could just go like to email funnels and things like that. So we can help you out any way we can.
Okay. And how do we end up paying you?
So basically we do the initial assessment for free. And then depending on what you need, I'll very clearly state, hey, here's what you want me to build out. So it really depends on what you want me to do. Typically to run the Facebook ads, if you just want me to do the management, that's usually around $500 a month. I can build out lead magnets for you. That's usually a couple hundred. Landing pages, it really depends on complexity. So I'll give you a quote on that if you want us to do the landing page. So after we decide what this campaign is going to look like and what you want me to do, I put a proposal together and explain exactly what I'm going to do for you and what it's going to cost you. And then you decide if you want to move forward.
Anyone else have questions? Jay, Claudia, Susan?
No, makes sense. I don't use Facebook at all for my business. I just use LinkedIn.
Craig, how about what are the other platforms besides Facebook and LinkedIn?
Programmatic.
Programmatic?
Yes. So again, I think programmatic's interesting. Again, we're still getting a better idea of what metrics look like. But programmatic on its surface is interesting because, like I said, you're capturing everybody in that audience. They don't have to be on a social media platform. Mm-hmm. And like I said, the data sets are pretty robust. Like I checked it out. These are data sets that the biggest companies use. The data that they're collecting, Big Brother's watching everywhere, right? They collect pretty good data. I feel really good that whatever kind of niche you want to target, we can do it on programmatic. There's no doubt about it. It's just what are those numbers going to look like, right? Like I said, they have a very low minimum, which I like. So it's easy to tip your toe in the water because their minimum is only $300 a month. So I think that's a really good way as an alternative. Again, depending on your target market though. I know I sound like a broken record there, but Facebook's good for certain things. But if they're stripping away certain things, and if you really want to focus on income, net worth, you can't do that on Facebook. So that's where programmatic could be a viable option.
How about YouTube?
Yeah, YouTube's great, but it's embracing video, right? So that's really more of a video play. But yeah, YouTube could be great. Listen, I would recommend if you're embracing video and you're putting out content with video, like just create a YouTube channel and have it anyway, because it's really good to drive people there too. Just again, just your existing prospects, clients for sharing. I think YouTube's a great platform just to create good content and education for your market. I will give a tip real quick. So everybody look into Google local service ads. Okay? So what Google's coming out with is now it's not in every market, but financial advisors can access this. Okay. So basically what they're saying is if you sign up for their local services, as the name says, it's very localized. If you sign up and show that you're licensed and you have all that good stuff, you'll show up. So it's almost kind of like running an ad, right? But here's the cool thing. You only pay per call. So you can set it up to where I only want to pay if somebody calls me, right? And usually I've been looking at this. It's usually like $100, $150 a phone call, okay? You only pay if they call you. They actually have a mechanism, they say, that they actually can track that phone call, because if somebody calls and it's like they're trying to pitch you or something like that, they say there's a way that they won't charge you for that. The only issue there is you have no control over, is it a 28-year-old who has no money and just wants to talk about making an IRA contribution, or is it a business owner that just sold a business and is looking for help? The ad sets are very templated, so I think you can pick like retirement planning, estate planning. You don't really have any control over the ad. They make it very templated, but I think it's just like you just Google local service ads and you'll find it, and you can put your zip code in there, and it'll tell you if it's even available in your market. And then they have an 800 number right there that you can call and just get some more information if you want.
Okay.
I haven't had anybody use it yet. I did have one person that is looking into it, but it's just something that popped on my radar, so I thought it was pretty interesting.
Kirk, can I ask you a question? Many times you described the automated process, and you talked about how Facebook is the way to go. What's the best way to start? You've done none of this.
Yeah. So a lot of the stuff we talk about here are bits and pieces of the process, right? Like how to put together a lead magnet, retention magnet, how to put together an offer. Like we had different sessions on each one of these. If you go back and listen to recordings, what we haven't done is put together a system. I have one. I just haven't done this. I'm going to try to put a little time in over the holidays this year and actually create it and map it out for everybody, because it'll just really be a little bit more visible. I think the challenge is that each marketing funnel is different. For example, I do one for our CPA Accelerator course, which I do once a year, and I do a webinar funnel, and I have multiple different things sending it in there. And doing a webinar funnel, which is basically a free webinar, and people are interested, they call me and we talk. That's very different from a Facebook ad going to a lead magnet, like a Fisher thing, and then somebody's going to hump your leg for the next 2 months, right? Which is basically what Fisher does. Craig and I talk about this a lot. It's comical how bad Fisher is. They just won't leave you alone. It's like a smart asset when they give you a lead and then they give it to 5 other people, and then everyone else is chasing them around, like showing up their door. When you look at different funnels, you have to figure out like what is the most appropriate way to get in front of and get this person's attention. And there's not a one-size-fits-all answer to that. So Craig and I are constantly, we talk every week. Like Craig is a wealth of information. And I'll tell you, I sent a friend of mine over because my friend was spending like thousands of dollars a month on Facebook ads and was getting like really crappy results. And I was like, just talk to Craig. Like instantly saving like, I don't know, it was like 80% of what he was spending, and he got much better results. It is not, this is the problem. Like we get some pitch, like, oh, we can do cold emails, we can do Facebook ads, we can do this, we can do that. It's like, that is a singular approach that works if you're looking for that singular answer. For example, if I'm trying to get in touch with a financial advisor, the best approaches are LinkedIn, Facebook ads, cold calls, or cold emails. Those are the best ways to get in front of a financial advisor. There aren't really many others that do well. LinkedIn works really well because we're all on it, right? We all acknowledge we're all there every day, right? Because that's where we're trying to find clients. They're all there, right? If you're trying to get in front of a doctor, you shouldn't be on LinkedIn, right? If you're trying to get in front of a guy, don't be on Pinterest. If you're trying to be in front of a millennial, you shouldn't be on Facebook. If you're trying to get in front of a boomer, don't be on TikTok, right? Knowing where your audience is really important. And then figuring out what the message is also important. You shouldn't be under any illusion that it's going to be a simple, just here's some money, get it done thing. Like you have to build it out. You have to test it. This is why we go through in some of these earlier sessions, like at a painstaking level, the detail of how you can figure out who your avatar is, how you can come up with the right offer. Like it's not that simple. It's much easier just to plug into an existing funnel that works and just say, all right, send me some leads. If you're doing it yourself, you can do really well, but it does take time. It does take testing. Last year, Craig and I were working on an ad, and the first one worked out really well. I think very highly of Craig, and he's going to blow sunshine up his skirt right now, but he's done a great job. Hey, we want to start with an ad. This first one usually is the best one. Then we A/B tested, and can we do better? Can we do better? And sometimes you do a little bit better, but usually not a lot. And then sometimes we'll try a completely different strategy just to see if we're in the right area. Because a lot of times, it's basically marketing is science. If you're a scientist, you come up with a thesis, you test it, you retest it, and you give it to other people to test. Hey, poke some holes in this. See if you can find holes in this. No, you can't. Okay, eventually it becomes like a scientific law. Like 1 + 1 = 2. It just becomes reality, and everyone accepts it if you can't poke holes in it. It's the same thing with marketing. You just have to test and come up with thesis and more thesis. And